when you're in it, you're taken care of, man. Like the congregation really rallies behind you. If you're sick, people drive you to the doctor, bring you meals, you need a babysitter, like you are taken care of. But if you stray for a moment, you're constantly threatened with being completely ostracized, not only just kicked out of the religion, but nobody talks to you, nobody acknowledges you. You walk past somebody on the street, they won't even make eye contact. So there was a lot of people that were successfully living double lives because they couldn't resist the temptations of the outside world, but they also wanted the benefits that went along with being part of a structured organization,
Hey everybody, we're not back. We are just here. I feel like I've done that like 3 times. We'll just roll with it. Welcome to another episode of Growing Up Christian. I'm Sam.
I'm Casey.
I'm Jeremiah.
Whoop, whoop. I have a question for you guys to just kick us off.
Let's hear it.
Do you guys have strong feelings about self-proclaimed, quote-unquote, snobs about things? Like, I'm a coffee snob or I'm a beer
Is this because
snob?
I said I was an audio snob before we started recording?
You're an audio snob. You're a car snob. What else? You're a computer snob. Come on, Jeremiah.
I am a snob about a lot of different things. That's all fair. I don't know what to say.
But I feel like if you're into certain things, just whatever, be into them, I guess. But there's I feel like accessible things like coffee and beer that everybody drinks. I feel like when people are self-proclaimed snobs about it, it's a little bit worse. Like car snobs. I drive a car. Of course, everybody drives a car, but I'm not. I don't know.
Not a car guy.
No, I'm never going to feel shamed because someone knows a lot about cars and talks about what they think is cool about cars. But okay, I'll just get into why I'm even bringing this up because I didn't get the reciprocating answer.
Please do.
Information that I want.
I'm a dildo snob.
A dildo snob? You're a size king? Is that it?
Yeah, that's what it is.
I think he's more of a texture guy.
Okay.
If it doesn't come with a shoulder strap, I'm not interested.
Ribbed for his pleasure, is that
right?
Okay.
Right. You got to plug into the wall. It draws so much juice.
Nothing battery operated. You go straight for the plug-in.
Passive active cooling, nothing passive.
Yeah. You get the liquid cooled dildos.
This thing's got a radiator on it. Holy crap!
I mean, I'd be a snob if I knew there was those many options on the marketplace.
You want to come hang out this weekend? Nah, I got to put a new water pump on my dildo.
It's how it always goes. Like you're a little bit interested in something, then you're like, "Is there like a subreddit that explains everything about this thing?" And then 3 or 4 giant wiki posts later, you're like, "Yeah, it's got to be liquid cooled." I don't know what you're supposed to do. If you're spending less than $1,600, you're getting absolute, complete garbage.
So I guess what spurred this is I was around. Hey, I'm trying to be as vague as possible. I was around a coffee snob recently. Now,
how did you find out he was a coffee snob?
Yeah, because people who are coffee snobs can't not talk about it, right? And that's another one of the differences, Jeremiah. I've never known you to be someone who can't not talk to me about cars. It's just, if I bring it up, we'll have a conversation. Otherwise, you're not like, hey, I know you were just talking about dildos, but I really want to talk to you about cars right now. And I want to tell you why everything I have is better than what you have.
We're talking about the CrossFitters of the beverage world.
Exactly.
Okay, makes sense.
That's exactly it. So it's there's just we're in at a public thing where coffee is served, and it's just whatever. It's like diner coffee. It's nothing special. And this person brings their own. They bring their own coffee, and they vocally Am I hearing a cat in the background?
Yes, that's my son Percy. He wants to be let into the bathroom so he can lick water out of the sink.
Oh, my cat does that. Oh, he licks it after you finish taking a shower. He like licks it from the faucet in the bathtub.
Sometimes he licks it. Sometimes he just stares at it. He likes them equally well.
Yeah. Anyway, that derailed my train of thought a bit. So he has his own coffee, and he's, loudly talking about why.
Is that a restaurant?
No, this is. I can't get into specifics, Casey.
Okay, but he didn't like carry one into a restaurant. This is at an event.
Let's think of like a church basement. It's a church basement putting on something, and I'm there, and this person's there, and it's like he brings his own coffee, and it's just like, oh my God, I can't even drink that. That's awful. Like I drink only really good coffee. Basically, just he wouldn't stop talking about the coffee. It's like he's like, I love giving the coffee that I drink to people who drink Dunkin' Donuts, and then they're just like, ugh, this is too strong, and I'm like, okay, like, nope, I don't even know what to say to that. Because one, strong coffee doesn't mean good coffee. I don't necessarily doubt that this person drinks what would be considered good coffee. Maybe he works at a local roastery, something like that. I don't know. But I'm just like, it goes from being something you like to being your identity. And when things shift to being an interest to being your identity is when they become really insufferable like to be around.
Yes.
So it's like pouring some into his thermos and like, oh, maybe anyone else want good coffee since that's awful and no one should be able to drink. And you're like, what? The people who made it are around. They're here. We're in the vicinity of the people who are offering this free coffee because it's nice. And guess what? When you offer free coffee, it's probably Folgers because that shit's cheap, or Maxwell House or some other dumb shit. But I don't know. It was just very cringy. And I find people who do that with like craft beer and stuff too to be just as infuriating. Where it's just like, oh, I can't drink. I only drink craft beer. You're like, all right, get the fuck out of your own way, dude.
You know where it becomes a problem is when you have it, because there's people who are really, really into something like let's say coffee. There's people who are really, really into coffee. It's not a problem that someone goes on and on about what they love. It's annoying when they go on and on about how they hate what's in front of them. That's where it gets really irritating.
And act like people who are okay with Dunkin' Donuts or the lesser form of something are like of a lower caliber human.
So it's not just having nice taste. Having nice taste is okay, but not being willing to lower yourself to like crummy taste for the sake of convenience or compassion or something. Is that where the line for being a snob goes?
You could just not drink it. You could just not drink it and go on about your day and even be like, oh, I'm a big coffee guy. I like this. It's when you start like making a scene around whatever's in front of you. Like someone is holding the item that you're like lambasting.
Which I was. Now, also, though, if you're not, even if no one around was drinking coffee, like was drinking it, if you were just out at a public area, we're in a park and I'm with this person and they have their coffee and they drink it and they enjoy it, that's fine. But again, it's like pumping it into the conversation when it's as though like I need everybody to know that I'm better than them because I like this. Is when that kind of shit gets wicked annoying. And people do that with so many things. Granted, I've probably done that before too, but like people, like I said, craft beer is something people do it with. People who vehemently are against fast food. How do you even put that in your body? Like no one asked for your opinion. I think that's when people get annoying about the things that they like. It's like, enjoy those things, like those things all you want. But when your enjoyment of it has to be coupled with talking about why you like giving this good thing to people who can't appreciate it just to watch them like spit it out or act like it's the worst thing ever because they don't have the sophisticated taste you do and that's like pleasurable to you. I'm just like, that's so weird. Like that's such a weird thing to force into the conversation that no one was even trying to have about coffee or or it may be craft beer or whatever. Like, and I think what the other defining difference is, I love a good ass hamburger. Like I'll put in work for a good hamburger sometimes, right? You whip up your own sauce, you caramelize the onions, you put that shit together with some serious love and care. And then sometimes I just want to just stuff my face with a McDouble. And as much as I like drinking good beer, sometimes I want to drink 15 Miller Lights. And I'm okay with that decision too. So I don't know. I think you can appreciate good things and also know that there's a time and a place for the things that don't cost 10 times the amount of the cheaper version of it, just for the sake of, I don't know. Anyway, that's my rant. I'm done. You guys, where do you want to take this conversation? Because I sound like a bitch now.
I mean, I feel like
I'm a curmudgeon.
I feel very convicted for my level of snobbery coming out of that conversation, because I'm like, I hate cheap beer. I just won't drink it. But I don't make a big deal about it. I don't criticize other people for liking it, but I definitely won't drink it.
So
yeah,
I used to feel that way. Maybe before I started drinking too much. I'm not sure.
Well, Sam, you don't have any contact with this side of things, but
we back on dildos?
No. Same sort of thing.
Okay.
Gun people.
Oh boy.
There are so many different sub communities of gun people, and certain ones are unbearable. Like people who are really into Glocks and just never shut up about it are awful. It's and plus, like, anybody who works at a gun store, almost without fail, is super annoying. They're just awful to talk to. Have I told the story about going to the gun shop in Wichita with April?
I don't know.
Go for it. We were looking for, we were going to get like a pistol for her so we could practice and stuff, but something that she liked that fit her hand and stuff like that, you know, she's picking out her own. And so we go to this one gun shop, in which is a nice place, big place, got a range in there and stuff like that. But it doesn't matter how nice the place is. Almost without fail, the people working there are super annoying. So we go walking in, and, you know, I would venture to say that April knows more about guns than a lot of their clientele. Like she's been around it quite a bit over the past 12 years. So we go walking into this place, and immediately there's a guy in our face, and he's like, "Hey, welcome in. You know, have you guys been here before?" And I'm like, "I have." She goes, "I haven't." And we're just like trying to get past this dude to go look at the thing we want. We just don't want to talk to him. And she's like, I haven't been here before. And he's like, "Oh, okay, well, let me show you around a little bit. Over here, we have the range. In this cabinet, this is our rental guns. People rent these, and then they shoot them on our range. So you rent them, not buy them, and you shoot them on the range. And then over here, these are the guns that are for sale that you can actually buy." And she's like, "Okay." And he goes, "I just wanted you to know what's going on, so you're not just kind of walking around in here like, oh, that one's pretty."
Cool.
And
I imagine sexism runs rampant through the gun community.
Oh, dude, that was a really bad one, where I was just like, I don't know what to say to this person right now. Like, I don't want to talk to you anymore, but man, you're bad at your job.
That's like the people, I feel like I've had good experiences with people who work in gun shops, but the people who work the booths at gun shows are like an entirely different breed. But like you're talking about, like there's the guy who has to test the taser out every 30 seconds for the entire show.
Oh yeah.
Like you hear the taser table going off.
Dude, every gun show you go to, you can just, it's just a chorus of
Wait, Sam, have you ever been to a gun show?
No,
or is this
I
a new
haven't.
concept?
So I'm
okay.
blocked.
All right, sweet.
People just try out that's what people get excited about, is trying out tasers.
Well, okay, so I don't know what gun shows are like where you are, Casey, but where I grew up,
probably
a gun show is, yeah, they're all the same. It's like 60 or 70% like actual just firearm dealers that bring stuff to the thing. So one of them might specialize in like old World War II rifles that came out of a crate, and someone else might have, a bunch of Glocks and regular handguns or something. The other like 40% is gun culture adjacent things, like people who sell lots of military insignia pins, or the guy who sells beef jerky. or the guy who has a lot of Confederate flag memorabilia, or like they all hang around the outside of the gun show, and there's always Taser guy who is trying to convince everyone coming past at the gun show where they're looking at guns that the thing they need to leave with is a taser. And they have to demonstrate how cool tasers are by tasing the table just over and over and over again for any people to look.
Not just a taser, but a $10 Wish taser that you can buy for $50.
Are tasers actually fairly cheap?
Nothing is cheap at a gun show. Like anytime you go to a gun show, you're going to pay like 50 to 150% more. They're more just for like looking around.
Why is that? Like just for literally anything?
Because you're
like
there, you're looking at AR-15s. You can't afford to get an AR-15, but there's a guy and he's got a bunch of.
He'll do a cash deal.
He's got a bunch of jackets. So he's got a bunch of jacket replicas from the Korean War, and you're like, well, I could get that and a helmet. Like that's pretty cool, and you don't really care what the prices are. Like that guy's there too.
It's like, have you ever been to an auction?
I have not been to one of those either.
They are so fun.
Okay, they're so a pretty cool event.
It's a terrible place to buy most things, though. You look at the handbill before you go, and you're like, man, they got a lot of cool stuff. Like, I might bet on this, I might bet on that. You go to the auction, and it's just idiots paying 3 times what the thing is worth. Like most of the time. Once in a while, you'll like squeak out with something super cheap, and it's amazing. And but most of the time, it's like
lost on everyone. Like no one knows the value of that thing there.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's the whole point of the auction, is like you get caught up in the adrenaline of bidding. And even though you said you weren't going to pay more than 55, like now you're at 75 and the guy just upped you by $1.50 and you're like, I'll go 80.
Yeah. The only thing I've ever bid on is abandoned storage units just to get on Storage Wars. I'm really into Storage Wars.
Oh man, you could probably find one of those full of Nazi memorabilia. It'd be very similar to a gun show.
I'm still waiting for the episode where they're like, people bidding on it, and then they like, I think what do? They open it and you get to see kind of like just what's there on the surface, but you don't get to dig through it. And then you get in there and you see like, I don't know, a bunch of like corpses and liquefied bodies. And, you got the corpse storage unit. Yeah.
That's a pickled noggin.
Yeah.
But I think another great thing about a gun show, it's just like a great cross section of humanity where you've got like, there's just average families wandering through there. There's guys who are obviously like sportsmen and stuff. And then there's other people you look at them, you're like, you're here thinking about crimes. Like, like I can just watch you walking around, the eyes, like you're just picking up all the knives and holding them one after the other for like 30 minutes. Like, why are you here?
There's a specific guy that you look for because he's fun to watch. Anybody who's wearing more than one knife, that's the guy you want to be close enough that you can hear the conversation. He's going to be entertaining. He's got like his phone in a Kydex holster.
Yep. You're going to hear some interesting but incredibly predictable political opinions.
There's a 9-1 odds that he's wearing cargo pants.
I imagine the diversity of political opinions is pretty limited at those events, though.
It's pretty limited, and you can, yeah.
Yep. Yeah, it's a time. It's definitely, it always sounds like more fun than it actually is.
It's like a trip to Guitar Center where like it sounds really cool. And then once you're there for 20 minutes, you're like, oh man, I'm not really that great at playing any of this. And these are all expensive. And
there's like, that one guy who thinks you can play every Rush song hogging the drum set.
Yeah.
You know, a Glock will shoot underwater. That's the guy playing Purple Haze at the Guitar Center. Yeah, it's the exact same. It's like, I like guitars. This should be fun. And then you get in there and you realize like, these are really expensive and I hate everyone here.
Yeah, it's like, I don't like any of the other people that are into this. Like I smoke a cigar every once in a while. I can't smoke a cigar at a cigar shop.
Yeah,
like,
that's another culture.
Oh my gosh, the arrogant, like, smelling my own farts crowd that just wants to sit around with their $12 cigars and wax poetical. It's like, it feels nice. Let me just sit on my back porch. I don't care.
See, you do understand how I feel about content snobbery. You get it.
I do. I think I'm more of a snob than you are because like you were giving the beer example and like I don't even know what a Budweiser tastes like. I've never had one.
I just have no standards anymore, Jeremiah, and I don't like when people point that out, so I get defensive. My standards.
That's kind of what it seemed like to me.
obliterated.
Like you know, I'll drive plenty of like old crummy cars or something, but like I'm very particular about how clean I keep mine and like how well maintained they are and everything. Like I don't feel like that's snobbery.
I can
like
appreciate that.
Yeah.
Mental note: never pick you up anywhere.
I know. I have brought my own TV and sound system with me on vacation more than once, just to make sure that I wouldn't be saddled with whatever like junk was at the beach house.
You bring your own router, own wireless.
I brought my own router before.
Damn, dude.
Jeremiah, we were texting earlier.
Yeah,
I want to hear about this like end times stuff that you were looking at.
Okay, so like Casey said, I was looking into some end time stuff. No, I was reading some conservative evangelical hot takes on the Ukraine-Russia situation.
That's so funny. I was reading about that literally right before we jumped on here while I was putting my kids to bed.
Well, this one article I found was talking about Pat Robertson's comments, which I know when something important happens in the world, you want to know, one, Pat Robertson's still alive. Two, what does Pat Robertson have to think about this? And why is it the gays' fault?
Yeah. So Pat Robertson kind of now at this point, like he's in it, is like, he's shriveled, right? So he's probably wearing the same sweater vests he's worn for the past 30 years, but he doesn't fit in them the same anymore. He kind of
he looks like he's melting.
He kind of looks like when at the end of the last Harry Potter movie, when Voldemort is like that decrepit baby.
Yeah.
And Harry Potter has to like, he goes and does he go talk to him? I don't remember how it plays out, but I'm like, oh, I looked at those two side by side this week and was like, I see the resemblance.
So I was reading the Rolling Stone article on his comments, and they had a link and a reference because his comments basically about Russia invading Ukraine are that we're even closer to the end times. God is compelling Putin to invade for end times reasons. Whatever. It's Pat Robertson. He didn't mention the gays too much. So I'm like, all right, that's fine. Whatever. That's an average Pat Robertson opinion. But the Rolling Stone article had a link to raptureready.com and its Rapture Ready Index. So I was like, well, that sounds interesting.
That does.
The purpose for this index, it's right there on the homepage. The Rapture Index has two functions. One is to factor together a number of related in-time components into a cohesive indicator.
Cohesive.
Yeah. The other is to standardize those components to eliminate the wide variance that currently exists with prophecy reporting.
They make it sound like an actual scientific formula.
Funny you should say that. You could say the Rapture Index is a Dow Jones Industrial Average of end-time activity, but I think it would be better if you viewed it as a prophetic speedometer. The higher the number, the faster we're moving towards the occurrence of pre-tribulation.
That's the criteria here. The more nonsense we're pumping out.
Oh, no. Guys, they have criteria. Don't worry. We're getting to the criteria, and you're not going to regret it. It says the Rapture Index is by no means meant to predict the rapture. Okay.
Because nobody knows the time or the hour.
Exactly. The index is designed to measure the type of activity that could act as a precursor to the rapture. Now,
is sexual activity one of those activities?
Oh, you know it is. But there's a scale. There's a scale. 100 and below on the Rapture Ready Index is slow prophetic activity. 100 to
Have they ever predicted that we were in the slow? Like the...
Yes, apparently, because the all-time low was 58, December 12th, 1993. Yeah, that's right. They've been doing this apparently since 1990. It was a historically significant index.
Wasn't that before the internet?
High. The internet kind of existed. It looks like they've existed since longer. They just moved it online a long time ago.
Oh, they were
100 to 130
publication before that.
Yeah, it's moderate prophetic activity. 130 to 160 is heavy prophetic activity. And they say above 160, fasten your seatbelts. Okay, so the current Rapture Index number, before we get into, well, actually, let me tell you some of the things that go into calculating this number.
I'm very curious about that.
So it says it was last updated March 7th of 2022. And I checked when I loaded the site and it wasn't March 7th anywhere in the world based on that time. So I just thought that was interesting.
Yourself, Pat.
Okay. So they have 45 categories. There's like debt and trade, false Christs, the occult, Satanism, unemployment, inflation. And so there's 45 categories.
Inflation
like that.
is an indicator. That's not just
and
like a natural economic turn of events.
And they all have a score next to all of those. Okay. So it says like debt and trade is a 5 out of what? It's not clear. False Christs is a 3. Satanism is a 2.
Wait. So every time a false Christ shows up,
no, it's just a
3
score.
Points. What?
No, it's not. I mean, civil rights has a 5 next to it, which is interesting. Okay.
I would love to see a list of false Christs as prescribed by that organization. Like, who makes that list? I'd say Lil Nas X is on there.
Absolutely.
Probably.
Lady Gaga for sure.
Now it gets
Greta
better
Thunberg.
though, because they have all 45 categories, but they also have comments on active categories. They have a change log of why did this score change. Okay.
This is more detailed than the Enneagram.
It really is.
Sorry, everybody who loves the Enneagram, but they got you beat.
And some of them, they're totally normal sounding. Like, okay, 10 is financial unrest. And their comment is many financial indexes are down more than 20% for the year. Or drug abuse, which is number 12. The lack of activity has downgraded this category. And you're like, well, you're not qualifying why that's happened. But okay, that's like a thing. You're like, interest rates are up, crime is down, whatever. That seems like that's something that could be objective, right? 15, moral standards. Rampant immorality threatens the U.S.'s future. But this is a good one. This is a good one. This score got better under number 16, anti-Christian, because Christians have had fewer attacks in recent days. I don't know what that means.
Attacks?
Yes.
I guess around the globe, they're probably...
It's not clear.
I'm guessing
then there's another one.
Things from around the globe. I know there's a large audience that thinks Christians are heavily persecuted in the U.S., but most of the focus has always been on like China or the Middle East.
Number 27 is global turmoil. The lack of activity has downgraded this category, which is weird because they definitely know about the whole Russia situation, because number 28 is arms proliferation. Putin withdrew from an agreement on the disposal of plutonium. Number 29, liberalism. The left has become fanatical in its opposition to Trump.
Amen.
And then they have another category for volcanoes.
Did bedbugs make the list?
Yeah.
No, but number 19, globalism. The Biden administration is all for globalism.
Oh, that's always been a big one. I remember hearing a lot about that when I was
globalism.
a kid.
It's at a 5, which I think is about the highest you can be, because I see a couple 5s. I see one that's a 5 plus 1, but it doesn't say 6. It just says 5 plus 1.
The New World Order.
Higher. Mark of the Beast. And then there's a separate one called Beast Government. What's the difference between those?
Government?
I prefer the term bestiality.
So based on all of that, 45 categories.
God.
And they can be scored, it looks like 1 through 5.
How can something be wrong that has so much detail?
Exactly. So where do you think we're at? Now remember, 130 to 160 is heavy prophetic activity. Above 160 is fasten your seatbelts. Where do you feel like we are?
Something tells me we all have to buckle up, but go ahead.
The Rapture Ready Index is only 2 down from its all-time high. It is currently at 187. The all-time high was 189, October 10th, 2016, which coincidentally is 1 month before the election. I don't know what was going on then. I just think it's awfully telling.
I can feel the centrifugal force right now.
Dude,
did I say that right? Did I say that right, Jeremiah?
Centrifugal or centripetal? I forget which is which, so...
Dude, you summed that up perfectly. How could something so detailed be wrong?
Yeah.
That is 100% of that's like what this is banking on. Like,
yes.
This is banking on like boomers going to the website and being like, man, a lot of work went into this.
Yeah, there's a lot of researcher. Well, I mean, they have an FAQ page that has literally hundreds of questions and answers.
An FAQ and on page? Is that what you said?
No, just regular FAQ page.
Oh, okay.
But they've got a category called Big Brother.
These categories seem to have blurred lines. I feel like some of these run together.
Real Robin Thicke of them.
I'd put Big Brother in the Beast Government category if it was
One of the questions is the smart bird like the Insectothopter?
Say that again?
Is the smart bird like the Insectothopter?
Okay.
Is this
What?
what does that mean?
It's come straight from the birdsaren'treal.com.
That's what it sounds like.
Insectothopter?
I guess is that like a conspiracy theorist thing about
interesting. The Insectothopter can't even say it. Insectothopter was a miniature unmanned aerial vehicle developed by the United States Central Intelligence Agency's Research and Development Office in the 1970s. The Insectothopter was the size of a dragonfly, and it was hand painted to look like one. Straight from Wikipedia.
Okay, so this is some sort of government surveillance insect.
Oh yeah, because they've got. I mean, if you just keep reading down the Big Brother one, why are there so many road spy cameras? What are billboard spy cameras? How are surveillance and ANPR cameras used on city streets?
These people who are still obsessed with the idea that people are watching you. It's like, yeah, no fucking shit. They have been for so long. We know it. Like, it's not like they're actively following Mr. Nobody in Middle America. It's just like, we'll watch everything. So when something happens, we can then look back and know more. Like, I don't love it, but acting like this is like mind-boggling.
I think me and Casey are going to be on the opposite end of this conversation from you.
I think you can boil every weird thing that happens down to what am I being sold? Like the other day we were talking, I got a drone for Christmas, and April and I are talking. I didn't have my phone open. I sound like this. My dad and I have had this conversation.
Oh, okay. I feel like I'm going to be on the same. I know where you're going with it. I think I know where you're going, and I think I'm going to be on the same page. And I might need to.
Well, I was like,
find my position a little better.
A drone would be like. I wonder if they make a drone that goes underwater. Like I wonder if you can buy a drone just like this that goes underwater, and then immediately, like within hours, I'm scrolling through Instagram and there's an Amazon ad with an underwater drone, 4K, blah, 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 blah. That's surveillance. That's what the surveillance is being used for. It's just trying to market you something, some sort of
I could explain how that
gadget.
actually works, though. I can explain how that actually works.
I don't. It's much more exciting if you don't.
This isn't the time for that. That's okay. Yeah, that's fine. You're correct. They are listening to you. Your phone is listening.
Okay, for sure. That's it. You're done.
We're in agreement.
No, I of course, I think that's happening. I've talked about plenty of things that have then been advertised to me shortly afterwards. I think I mean it from like, there's like this preoccupation with some people that the government's specifically interested in them because of their dissenting opinions. And it's like, nobody cares about you because you watched Alex Jones's YouTube page. They only care about you when you start saying words that put you on an FBI watch list. Like, right.
Well, it's the same people that are like, they're kicking all the conservatives off of blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, they're not. They kicked some people off who did very flagrantly broke the terms of service, like using hate speech and stuff. And you just like their other content. And so you think you're at risk now.
Yes.
Like, just because you were a fan of their page does not mean you're at risk. Like, they were comparing wearing masks to the Holocaust, and now they don't work here anymore. Like,
it's funny how whenever people try to compare any modern day event, especially as like white middle class Americans, to the oppression of the Holocaust, they're fascinated how people respond so poorly to that. They're like, I don't.
Funny you should say that, because when I was looking for conservative hot takes on Twitter earlier, Tommy Loren, I don't know if you know who that is. Conservative commentator.
We know. We wish we didn't.
We've been trying to get Russian podcast since we started. Just kidding.
The Russian invasion is, in her quotes, quote, tyranny, but forcing Americans to wear face diapers and get 3 ineffective COVID shots is our patriotic duty. Weird.
So weird.
And the top comment on Reddit is local woman cannot distinguish the difference between public health precautions and war crimes.
I can see why the two are easily conflated. I can't think of two more awful. Well, no, I can. There's plenty of awful people, but I feel like anytime Tommy Loren or Candace Owens comes, like, oh, our boy John Cooper just recently was on Candace Owens' show. It's like,
oh, of course.
Cool.
It's almost guaranteed at this point that you could probably get a show on Newsmax, maybe at least a segment on Newsmax, if you just say insane things. I know they're not necessarily on Newsmax. I just am like kind of spitballing here because Casey, you know, we've been talking a lot about how we can take this to the next level. And I think maybe going the alt-right direction could be helpful for us.
There's a lot of guys who look like us who have already gone that direction.
Yeah,
you know,
but I want to be
saturated market.
I would like to be tucked in between John Cooper and Sean Spicer on Newsmax. And I think if we can just nail that slot, we have a real chance at making something big happen here.
I don't have principles. I'm down.
Perfect.
Someone you guys may have heard his name before, Dinesh D'Souza. Does that name sound familiar?
Oh, yeah. Obama's America.
Here's his hot take. I noticed the witless progressives are trying to deplatform and debank Putin in the same manner they have done to Nick Fuentes. The problem is that the little plastic swatter that works on a fly doesn't really work on a grizzly bear. # Ukraine.
I really don't get the like fascination and like hero worship with Putin, but I think it's
because
just
he's an authoritarian and they secretly wish they had an authoritarian to institute a Christian nationalist state. That's the secret.
I think what's funny about that though is the idea that that's what he's doing. Like the notion that what Putin's doing is trying to like further Christianity by pushing back
because they're so
like,
easily swayed. He just puts out some propaganda saying like Russia will never legalize homosexuality, and within 2 hours, dum-dums on Facebook are being like, maybe Putin should invade America next. Like, you're that gullible. Like, or when Putin comes out, he's like, Biden's such a weak idiot, and conservatives are like, look, even Putin can see it. Like, or he knows what button to push, and you're that stupid. Like,
because he arguably had something to do with why the first our previous president was president anyway. He knows who he's He knows
I don't
what he's
think that's
doing.
arguable. Yeah, Russian propaganda farms are like massive.
It's pretty unbelievable. It's weird because I'm going to sound like one of those Putin guys. No, no, it's incredible though. Like what he's able to do, the way he's able to grab the attention of people in the United States. Like Casey and I talked about this somewhat recently too, where it's just like, 20 years ago, everyone did not like that. Like there's been an obvious shift in the way that people think about Putin, but the way that he's been able to do that, obviously Facebook and social media, in the way that he's like done, like, I don't know, he's pretty much had a full, I can't even imagine how much money and resources have been spent on like these his social media campaigns too. Because one of the things we looked at not too long ago was the amount of like Christian Facebook pages that were actually just like from Russian.
Russian troll farms.
It's a huge percentage. It's the majority.
Yeah.
Yeah. All the meme pages.
He probably should have used that money to diversify their economy. Oil and natural gas it doesn't look like it's going to pan out for them long term.
Yeah.
Well, so that's one of the things that I've learned since the last week when we talked about this whole deal. So there's a number of factors here that contribute. That's what's annoying about anything that happens, is like the simplistic dumb takes that just grab headlines that people run with. Like even just like it's on both sides, but even like the notion that like, well, Putin wants to reestablish the Russian Empire and that's what his goal is. It's like, okay, is that thought in his head? Maybe. Okay, but there's a lot of factors here. One of which is the fact that like when Ukraine was a part of his country, they built tons and tons of pipelines between Russia and Europe, where they transport their only real sizable export and the basis of their economy, oil and natural gas, and sell it to Europe, who's dependent upon it. Partly because like Germany decommissioned all their nuclear power plants for whatever reason. They decommissioned all their nuclear power plants for environmental reasons and stuff, and are totally reliant on Russian natural gas and oil.
For environmental reasons.
Yeah, right.
Okay, sure.
Look, I'm sure I am paraphrasing. I'm doing the exact thing. I'm criticizing people of doing. But so there's all of these pipelines and stuff that are between Russia and Europe that flow through Ukraine, which they now have to pay tariffs and taxes and all sorts of stuff to the tune of billions of dollars, through to a state that they don't even view as a legitimate state. It should be a part of their country. It should just be Russia West, right? On top of that, in the past 20 years, I don't know what the time frame is, but it's within the past 20 years, there's been 3 major sources of natural gas that have been discovered in Ukraine. One in the east, one in the west, and one off of the Crimean Peninsula in the Black Sea. So now this illegitimate state in their eyes, which they have to pay all this money to export, their only real export, is also going to be a competitor in those same markets. And while they didn't always have the resources to extract those, companies like BP and Shell and stuff like that are more than happy to strike a deal with them to pull that stuff out of the ground and become a direct competitor to Russia. There's a lot of factors here that go beyond just Putin's trying to reestablish the Russian Empire, or he's trying to spread Christendom and take it away from the globalist, Satanist, humanists.
Feels like you're really overcomplicating this, Casey.
Maybe
Everything's
so.
Simple. Everything's simple, and there's simple answers.
Maybe this would be a good time to pause and just double check. Jeremiah, has the prophecy index moved at all since we've been talking?
Not since we've been talking, no. I'm curious if it's the 8th yet there, but it doesn't appear to be.
Did what I just say, did it bump the needle at all?
No, it is still 187.
Well,
we just don't have the poll that I thought we did.
We should probably check in on this
chat,
every week.
Yeah, chat, can you let us know when the next changes, chat? Thank you.
I think it's worth our time to just, at least take a quick look at that at the top of every episode every week.
Now, Sam, what was that verse you quoted when I first read off raptureready.com? You said, no one knows the day or the hour?
Yes, that is it.
That's not the verse they have in the header. The verse they have in the header is, behold, I come quickly, Revelations 3:11.
That sounds like me.
Maybe one of the most relatable verses in the Bible.
Yeah. Sounds like, me after the wife and I get a night out alone.
You should try Kratom.
Yeah, that sounds. It sounds like I should definitely give that Kratom. What I still don't even know what that is. I just know that weirdos sell that to you illegally. I wouldn't trust anyone who sold Kratom.
I thought it was legal. Is it legal?
It doesn't matter. They're weirdos.
It's legal here, at least. I don't know. I buy it from an Indonesian guy named Muhammad. He's super cool.
Well, now you're just trying to make me sound like I wouldn't trust a guy named Muhammad, and I don't appreciate the way this is coming off, Casey.
Yeah, well, it's just one of the many things on the list of reasons that I don't
think it's
trust
really
you.
fucked up that you just put your drug dealer's name out there like that too, man. I don't know what the fuck's wrong with you.
Oh, I get a referral bonus.
Oh, I do use that.
It's like Citibank, He gives me $50 every time I refer a new customer.
Okay. Well, I guess it's a solid business model. What do I know?
I have one more question from the FAQ page of raptureready.com. Will the Antichrist be a homosexual?
Oh my God, I hope so. He would.
They're referencing Daniel 11. They're referencing Daniel 11:37, which says, "Neither shall he regard the God of his fathers, nor the desire of women, nor regard any god, for he shall magnify himself above all." Some Bible scholars believe that the phrase "desire of women" means that Antichrist, the world's last and most terrible tyrant, will be homosexual, but it's more likely this man will be so arrogant and self-absorbed that nothing and no one can deter him from loving himself above all else. He will, much like Adolf Hitler, consider himself far too important to give much regard to women, especially to one woman.
I feel like we had a president about a couple of years ago.
Directly contradict that?
Yeah, it's not important.
So is the Antichrist George Azar or Luke Wilson?
Yeah.
That's what I want to know.
Ooh, I bet they're arguing over it right now. Who wouldn't want to be the Antichrist? It sounds like a solid gig.
I'll support either one of their bids for ruler of the world.
Oh, I mean, I was against it. I was not. It's tough, but I think that I would be swayed by one of them if they were the Antichrist, for sure.
Like you think
One
they could
world
get you?
government is fine with me as long as Luke Wilson's running it.
I think he could do a pretty bang up job.
Now, but to run a one world government, though, like he's going to have to be a dictator. Like we're just admitting that, right? Like,
Yeah,
there's
of
no way
course.
to get by. Okay, it's not going to
we're
be a
here for
democracy anymore. Okay, got it.
No. One dictator to rule them all, and I'm here for it.
George, Luke, we're about to break a pool cue and throw one into each of you to tell you to hash it out.
Debate. Yeah, we can moderate the debate over who wants to be the Antichrist. We probably ought to extend offers to Bill Gates, Anthony Fauci, I guess who else? Kamala Harris. Obama's probably off the hook.
I don't know who the other heavy hitters are. My up and coming Antichrist game is pretty off right now. I feel like I haven't paid enough attention to the up and comings.
Yeah, I feel a little out of the loop, to be honest.
We'll have to put together a bracket. I think a bracket is probably the best thing.
Most likely to be
for
the
March Madness.
bracket.
Now that we're entering into March Madness, even though I don't know anything about sports and brackets and seeds and how that shit works, we'll get something together maybe.
We could get podcast guests to like submit names to be added to the bracket, like nominees.
Oh my God.
So let me introduce our guest this week, because this was one, Sam is the booking king of the universe, and he's managed to pull guests that I thought were above our pay grade that we were very excited to talk to. One of which was our guest this week, comedian Doug Smith. So Doug grew up a Jehovah's Witness and has a really interesting story, that kind of involves family dynamics and, growing up a part of this church, but also going to public school and kind of being daily, on a daily basis, he's kind of paraded in front of the student body as being different than them. And man, he's just had a really interesting story. Super funny guy. If you aren't familiar with Doug's work, or if you are and you haven't seen it yet, Comedy Central used to do this. I don't know if they still do it, but it's this great show called This Is Not Happening. And it's like a storyteller show. And it used to be Ari Shaffir that hosted it. And now it's, I can't think of the guy's name. Another great comedian. But anyways, it's comedians. They come on and they tell a story. And every great comedian you can think of has been on This Is Not Happening at one point and told a really funny story. Doug's is about how he witnessed and intervened in and stopped a rape in New York. Yeah. Which sounds pretty awful at first. He manages to make it into a really funny story. He does have a souvenir. He got a pretty gnarly gash across his face from the assailant.
Got stabbed in the face. We did not hit on this. This story is one of the ones that he tells a lot, and it's one that I was familiar with before reaching out to him. And sometimes it's just not worth having someone rehash the same story they've done literally everywhere. So you should definitely check out his story about this on This Is Not Happening, because it's an unbelievable story. It's also funny, and it's one of it's got to be like one of his most watched videos at this point, because it's such an incredible one.
But really funny comedian. You can find his work on YouTube. You can check out his website. I think he's touring again now, so you can find out some, where his dates are going to be. He's been on a number of different late night shows and stuff.
James Corden, Conan O'Brien.
Yeah. Really cool guy. We had a great time talking to him, and I think you're going to love it. For those of you who bought t-shirts, good news. The t-shirts are en route from Sam to me. No one trusts Sam enough to put addresses on shipping labels. So I will be receiving t-shirts and then shipping them out to you. You will also be getting one of our really cool GUC stickers and just I don't know. I might just, sprinkle my essence onto your new t-shirt.
Maybe he'll send you a fossil that he found in the river in his backyard or something.
I might. You know what? That's a great idea. I'm going to sprinkle in some fossils that were formed during the Noah's flood.
Yes.
In with all of our orders. And so keep an eye out for that when you get the t-shirt that you purchase. Thank you to everyone who bought those t-shirts. We really appreciate your support. We're gathering some cool ideas for our next merch run. It'll be happening, fairly soon. And with that, enjoy our conversation with Doug Smith.
Hey everyone, we're back with our guest, Doug Smith. Doug, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Thanks for having me, guys. Yeah,
I'm excited to talk to you. We've been talking for at least a year now about wanting to talk to someone who comes from the Jehovah's Witness background. We've talked to a Mormon, or two. We've talked to a couple, but no Jehovah's Witnesses yet, and they're a kind of their own. So I'm very excited to hear your story and get ready into some of the weeds converted. There. Yes, that's what we're expecting. I expect a strong sales pitch. If you have years and years of door-to-door experience, this better be good.
Yeah, let's see if I still got it.
Yes.
So when we were younger in church and stuff, there was always like 1 month out of the year where like every get-together, we went through a different denomination or subgroup of Christianity and like all the reasons that they were wrong and we were right. Did you guys have those about us? Like, did you talk some guff on us, once in a while?
Yeah. I mean, that's the funny thing about Jehovah's Witnesses is they do identify as Christian, because it's Bible based. But yeah. I mean, I think I wouldn't even say that there was necessarily things pointed out in Catholicism or Protestant or anything like that were like fundamentally wrong. I think it was more like in terms of their beliefs. I think it was more in terms of, honestly, it seemed to me that the biggest beef was that those organizations didn't, they weren't strict enough. You know what I mean? Like they adhered to the Bible, but it kind of loosely, like, premarital sex is you shouldn't do it. They kind of turn a blind eye to it. Whereas with Jehovah's Witnesses, it's like a punishable offense. I think that's, to me, what I noticed as a kid to be the biggest difference is like there's a lot of other religions out there that actually believe a lot of the same stuff, in terms of do's and don'ts, but it's the enforcement of these beliefs and the whole idea that if you are to do any of these things, you're a sinner and the need for repentance. And if you don't repent, you're out, and that's to me what makes it a cult more than a organized religion, is the blowback and the ramifications of that go hand in hand with, doing the wrong thing.
Yeah.
Whereas with you guys, I'm sure there were there was definitely rules, and I'm sure you were raised fairly strict, but you weren't thrown out on your ass if you did the wrong thing, right?
You guys got a corner on the severity market, that's for sure.
We weren't thrown out. You would just wish you were dead. Is like that's the difference. I think is like I wish I was dead versus I'm completely excommunicated and actually out on my own. Because there is it's funny because the lingering effects of that severity, like there weren't. You're right, like. Maybe some people were. I think there's some definitely fundamentalist bents of Christianity that would have been like, oh, you're out on your own now. Sex was a problem. Worse if someone got pregnant, obviously. As you can't get rid of it, so you get that sucks for the parents. The parents have to deal with it, I guess.
That's more of a woman's problem, though.
Yeah, it's true. They're out on their own. We don't believe in abortion, but we're also not going to do shit to help you out with that. So my son just didn't know what he was doing. He's 16 years old. Come on, we'll pray for his forgiveness, and he'll accept Christ as his Lord Savior again, and we'll be all set. And you can deal with the next 30 years of child rearing.
Yeah, show me the Bible passage where you're not allowed to be a deadbeat dad, right?
Yeah.
It does seem like so Sam and I both went to like fundamentalist churches and schools and stuff, and it seems like the rules are similar, you guys sucked a lot more of the fun out of everything. And excommunication is a thing that's like, that's very Jehovah's Witness, as opposed to like, we'll do anything to get another person in the seat, you know?
Right.
So it takes a lot for them to boot somebody out. You know, they have to announce that they're going to live as gay or something like that.
We like to, we accept people as they are. That's how you get them in. And then you're like, all right, now it's time to change your life a bit.
That's a good point. That's that's one of the things that, like, you know, I've been out of Jehovah's Witnesses for 20 years. I left when I was 20, so almost 20, 19 years. And, you know, I've kind of, over the last couple of years, because I'm working on pitching a podcast all about my experience, and I'm also working on a solo show that's just like a kind of like a themed stand-up show just about my experience.
Oh, that's awesome.
In the efforts to do both of those things, I've kind of gone back and I wouldn't say I've like re-immersed myself in it by any means, because I've worked very hard to undo a lot of the brainwashing, but I've gone back to see if they've made any amendments to any of their beliefs, because so many of them are so antiquated. And one of them particularly is their stance on homosexuality, which when I was growing up was, you know, a hard no. Like there were no openly gay people in my congregation or anywhere that I was aware of. And it was very much like, this is a sin. You know, a man is not supposed to lie with another man. You know, sex is only for the purposes of procreation. And I thought, you know what, if they want to have any success in terms of their rate of conversion, they're going to have to fucking loosen the reins on that one a little bit. And they are still fucking sticking to their guns, man.
Yeah. I wasn't expecting a twist to this story, I guess.
It's like
that's why
Mormons are like the only example of any of them that have like really altered their stance on controversial things.
Yeah,
because if you go back and look at like original Mormon doctrine, they had some really racist stuff in there. You know, about, but I don't know if it banned black members, but there was a lot of just really rough things. Like they couldn't be a part of the priesthood and all of this stuff. And the Jehovah's Witnesses have gone back and altered their doctrinal statements several times. Correct. Yeah. Mormons, my bad. Interchangeable.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, right. Yeah.
They, God, I just lost my train of thought. Something had to do with, whatever. So you said you left 20 years ago. Before I get into that, I got my thought back. Conversion, right? You're talking about sex. Can't have sex before you're married. It's a big and it's tough. Yeah, good luck getting your 20 somethings converted to when that's your hardline stance. But one of the things I had learned recently about them is that they have like the highest defecting rate of any religion and also the highest conversion rate. So it feels like they're constantly converting people who are already married when that sex thing's kind of off the table, which I think is funny. It's like, now we know you're like, you're not out there. Like that's not the hang up anymore. So now you're our prime target.
Yeah, for sure. That's why, like, you know, my mom is the one who was she's the one who kind of led the charge in really going into the religion full throttle and really did her damnedest to pull me and all of my siblings and my dad into it, even though my siblings and I were all, you know, brought into it from birth, so we didn't know anything different. My dad, you know, he had lived as a free man, for lack of a better phrase, for almost 40 years. And so when she got into it, I think he probably thought like, well, you know, it seems a little odd, but whatever. It's not really going to have any effect on me. He was already a married man who was settled down with kids, you know, like there was no real impact on his life in terms of what he couldn't do. You know what I mean? So like, if you're already a grown adult who's already settled down, it's not that it's still very taxing and demanding, the amount of Bible study that goes into it in preparation for 3 church services a week and the going door to door. It's very, very demanding of your time and energy. But in terms of the rules and restrictions, if you're not a adolescent, horned up, just lunatic who just desperate to, stick their dick in something, it's not that crazy. You know what I mean? It's like not that difficult to adapt to. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's not as costly.
Yes, exactly.
I think that's why, so even for us, evangelicalism hit a lot of the kids we grew up in, and hit their parents in their early mid-20s. They'd been married, settled down. So it's it's not particularly costly. So maybe when it comes to drugs and alcohol, if you're into that, it's pretty frowned upon. But if that's not really your thing, and you're just 20 something, you go to work every day and this just becomes your social club for a lot of people. I can see it not being particularly costly.
For your dad, it was like joining a homeowners association.
Yeah.
Dues totally. And everything.
And the only thing that he really had to keep under wraps was, and he did a very good job. I didn't know until I was in my later teen years that he was smoking the whole time. And I had no idea. So he would smoke on his way home from work, in the car, all the windows down. He always had multiple packs of blue original Trident in every pocket, every jacket pocket, every drawer, every, cup holder of the car, just, a lifetime supply. And I had no idea. I had absolutely no idea. And I actually heard an account, because there was not to get too off base, but Leah Remini did a whole series on Netflix about Scientology. I don't know if you guys watched any of that.
Oh yeah.
And she did a whole episode about Jehovah's Witnesses. She had 6 or 7 different witnesses talking about their experience. And one of these women was, she was in an abusive relationship, because another thing that happens is because people that are born into it are told to refrain from not only premarital sex, but masturbation, anything having to do with the opposite sex. People are so repressed that I watched countless people in my congregation get married when they were 19 or 20 years old to people that they didn't really know very well, just because they wanted to have sex. And then they wind up getting involved with these people and find out that they're not really compatible. And then the real icing on the cake is the only grounds for divorce is adultery. And one of these women was in an abusive relationship where her husband was not cheating on her, but he was beating her on a regular basis. And she would go to the elders and, I can't stay in this relationship. And they're like, well, maybe if you didn't, they said to her, maybe if you didn't sass your husband so much, maybe if you were a little bit more submissive in the relationship. It's also so demeaning to women. They're really treated like second-class citizens. So she was stuck in this relationship with this abusive guy, and she didn't see an out. And then finally she thought, wait a second, he smokes on occasion. Maybe and there's also a whole thing in the Jehovah's Witnesses organization where there is not grounds for anybody to do anything in terms of removal of somebody from the religion. There's a 2-witness rule that it has to be seen by 2 other people. So she's like, he smokes. If I can get 2 other people in the congregation to see him smoking, that might be grounds enough to get him kicked out of the religion. Therefore, I can divorce him if he's no longer a witness. And that's what it came down to. Him physically abusing her went completely unpunished for years. And then finally, this guy got pegged for smoking and got kicked out. And that's when she was finally able to divorce him.
What? That's
mind blowing, right?
Yeah. It's ridiculous.
That is just people getting caught up in the minutia of their code, Yeah. Yep. And the code takes precedent over everything else.
Absolutely.
That's so crazy that physical violence is just like, well, don't be a bitch. It's like basically the response. And then it's like, oh, but you smoke a cigarette, and especially like the two witness rule is because I'm guessing the problem. Well, maybe not. You tell me. If they had a second witness to him beating her, would that have been a problem?
They had a second witness. I mean, yeah. I mean, I think that's applicable to anything. You know what I mean? But like, I guess you don't usually have an audience when you're kicking the shit out of your wife. You know what I mean? Like,
I mean, I only do my abuse in front of other people. So
cool your jets, pal. See you on Sunday.
And that's another thing. I was not aware until after I left that there is, there's pedophilia and child molestation that is rampant in the organization. And again, because, any sort of repression is going to breed that sort of behavior. You know what I mean? People are driven to insanity. And so I didn't experience any of that. I was not aware of any of that in my congregation. But, again, there's not grounds for removal of anybody doing any of that behavior, again, unless there's a 2-witness rule. And it's like, well, who the fuck is having a viewing party when you're molesting a child? You know what I mean? It's ridiculous.
Dude, that's been one of the most shocking things about it.
Yeah.
Just, there's some very public videos of Jehovah's Witness members testifying in front of some ruling board in Australia.
Yeah.
Dude, it is shocking and terrible.
So
and then
fucking stupid, right? You can just see they might as well just be going bad the whole time. You know what I mean?
I'm out of the
loop. There was a whole. In Australia, there was countless child molestation charges that were finally brought to the authorities against the Jehovah's Witnesses, and they denied it left and right, and then it finally went to I don't know if there's a Supreme Court in Australia, but they're basically the equivalent of that, and these guys just completely had egg on their face because they had to just regurgitate all this indoctrination that they had been taught about, like, well, we can't do anything because we believe that there has to be this 2-witness rule, so we can't do anything, bringing anything to the authorities, and you could see the attorneys or whoever was questioning them, that you could see them just like their minds were blown by the naivete and just the ignorance behind all these rules that they follow.
And there's also like an arrogance to it too, know, because a big part of the response is like God's law trumps man's law. So, we don't feel any responsibility to your rules. Like they're inconsequential to us. This is our rule. It's 2 witnesses. And if you don't have a second witness, then we don't act on it because that's what God's word says.
Right. And they're very much of the belief that, nothing needs to be handled by any outside sources or bringing anything to the authorities. It's very much just like, we'll leave this in God's hands. We'll find a way to deal with this.
They had like that. Not that those issues haven't come up in the evangelical church over the decades, but
once or twice.
They're not exactly quick on their feet to involve the authorities, but there's nothing in their bylaws about it. But that's my understanding is like the J-Dubs are very much like, no, we handle everything internally.
Yeah, totally. And
evangelicals they're content with like a level of deviation from scripture when it serves them. Like
right.
The eye for an eye thing, take some liberties there.
Well, Jesus addressed that, Casey. Get your head out of your ass.
and Jehovah's Witnesses, like, everything is done in-house. So they're not stupid by any means. They have, they have accomplished attorneys, doctors. There are people that are very proficient in their chosen fields that they have an infrastructure really within the organization to handle all the challenges that come with navigating life in the outside world while keeping everybody sheltered. Even, a perfect example is I don't know if you guys were aware of, they have these different kind of compounds that I guess to an outside observer would basically qualify as a commune, where Jehovah's Witnesses, they live and they work. They basically get free room and board in exchange for their services in terms of all their the printing of their publications, because Jehovah's Witnesses have publications printed in over 700 different languages. I had no idea there was even close to that many languages. Yes. Watchtower and Awake Magazine, countless other publications. So they have their world headquarters was in Brooklyn, in Dumbo, right near the Brooklyn Bridge. And they bought up a bunch of real estate in like the early 80s in Dumbo, before it was Dumbo, you know, and for dirt cheap. And that was their headquarters, where they printed all their publications. And they just recently, I'd say maybe 7, 8 years ago, they sold all this property in Dumbo for literally billions of dollars.
Oh, well, I heard you talking
earlier
about
on
this.
Bitcoin.
Yeah. I heard you talking about this on another podcast.
Yeah.
About that compound. I mean, how big was it?
It was huge. I mean, I used to go visit all the time, because that was my mom's goal for me, because I was always a really good fine artist. I've been drawing since I was like, 5, 6 years old, and my whole life I just wanted to be a cartoonist. And so my mom was encouraging of my artistic abilities, but she also wanted to find a way for me to channel that into something within the confines of the organization. So her dream.
So Watchtower have religious cartoons?
They actually do have almost like a New Yorker style, just like kind of single frame kind of thing in the back. I don't know if they still do, but they did at one point when I was growing up. But they also have like beautiful, like full color illustrations. They have a whole art department there that does all the illustrations for their publications, like really, really accomplished, classically trained oil painters that do these magnificent paintings. So her goal was for me to live at one of these branches and be in the art department. So I used to go with her to take tours of these places all the time, and everybody there looked so miserable. It was and that was really, like, even as a young kid, I wasn't really, I don't know if I would really say I was familiar with the idea of what a cult was, but looking back on it now, it was like, oh yeah, it was clearly a fucking cult. Like, just people that had been brainwashed, and it was kind of no turning back. It was too late. They had surrendered their lives to this organization, and they were just kind of stuck there. And
how old were you when your mom brought you there?
Oh, I mean, we went there throughout my whole childhood, but I'd say maybe the first time I went there, I was like 5 or 6.
And you just kept going back and realizing how sad it was.
Yeah. It's awful. I mean, they give people, like I said, room and board. They feed them, but they give them like a monthly allowance, like $100. I mean, these people are like impoverished. And another thing with witnesses is, like I was saying earlier, it's so demanding in terms of your time and energy, just in terms of like 3 church services a week. So like, there's a Tuesday night meeting, a Thursday night meeting, Sunday meeting, in addition to all the hours that you put in going door to door, that a lot of witnesses can't, there's no upward mobility in terms of the jobs that they have, because they can't afford to devote that kind of time to their profession. So a lot of them have just basic trades. There's a lot of carpenters or plumbers. And they really can't really thrive in the workplace, because it's discouraged. They're made to feel bad for spending any time or energy in anything that's not completely involving the organization itself.
They probably lose a lot of clients when they, after they build them a chair or fix their leaky pipe, when they're like, so anyway, I'm part of this group. And they're just like, wait. What are you doing? You're never coming back here.
And that's another thing. Informal witnessing, as they call it, is also encouraged. So like
living out your testimony, which
means like taking every opportunity to tell people about Jehovah and the hope for the new system of things at every chance you get. So like I was encouraged to do that in school. I was one of the few kids in my congregation that was actually allowed to go to public school. A lot of kids in my congregation were homeschooled, and my mom was like, "Fuck that! I don't want to be your teacher. So you'll go to school." But
I was homeschooled.
Oh, were you?
Yeah, I was.
Oh, wow. So, but I
weren't
was
even Jehovah's.
I was encouraged to like tell all my classmates and be like, "Have you heard the good news of Jehovah's Kingdom?" Which, of course, like I kept it very close to the vest. My entire MO all throughout school was keeping it completely under wraps because I didn't want to be exposed as a fucking, Bible thumping Jesus freak,
It is funny how that's like the same business model as like Pampered Chef or, Kirby vacuums or whatever. It's like, you know what people love? They love it when you leverage your friendship with them to sell something.
Oh yeah. It's a giant pyramid scheme. Yeah, absolutely.
Nothing. I didn't realize until more recently in my life. Like, I got 2 dogs. One of them's too small to matter. Like when it comes to people knocking on the door. But I have one that has like anxiety and shit. And my dog, I don't know. He's kind of fucked up in that a little bit, but he's great. I love him. But when people knock on my door, it's just like it's an absolute nightmare. I hate it so much, and I can't imagine how awful that experience must be, knowing that there's so many people that feel the exact same way I do when you get a knock on the door and having to just do that. Like, I mean, when you talk about people not being able to excel in their careers because they have to spend all this time doing that, is there anyone that's a Jehovah's Witness that doesn't do that at all? I mean, my understanding is you actually have to like log your hours and submit it. I don't know if that's just on like more, is that across the board? And does everyone actually do this a decent amount?
So from my understanding, my congregation that I was in, I had nothing to compare it to because I was born and raised in the same town my whole life and the same congregation my whole life. So I didn't have anything to compare it to. But according to other witnesses that would move from from another town or another kingdom hall to our kingdom hall, I was told many times that my congregation was the strictest congregation that they had ever been part of.
Wow.
So from my perspective, yes, everybody, I have vivid memories of at the end of every month, there was like a little, kind of like a timesheet that you would fill out the date and the number of hours that you were in the ministry that day. And then you would add it all up and, put the tally at the bottom, sign it, and then put it in a box where the elders would review it. It would find, had a whole file cabinet full of all the different publishers in the congregation and the hours allotted in the ministry. And, they kept very, close tabs on that. And if you didn't do that, which is a good question. Like, was everybody, not everybody is going to be an equally involved participant, but if you weren't, you were kind of like looked down upon, you were kind of like, oh, he's not really, he's lesser than, so there was like kind of like a popularity contest. Like the most well-respected witnesses in the congregation were those that were really kind of like show ponies in a way. They were the ones that were, and the church services are it's not just an elder giving a sermon. There is a lot of that, but there's a lot of audience participation. So there's a lot of like question and answer. So that, there was like the ones that were held in the highest esteem are the ones that would sit in the front row and have their hand up every time. It was like school, you know what I mean? There was like teachers' pets. And so like the ones that would comment at the meetings the most, the ones who would be out in the ministry the most, they were the ones that were held in the highest esteem. And then there were people that were just kind of they were in it maybe they were raised in it, but there was no real passion for it, and they were definitely looked down upon, thought of as kind of lesser than.
So it was like an infrastructure that like continually pushed people to reaffirm publicly like their commitment to the cause. And it's interesting. How structured was like the door-to-door process? Did you guys have like mapped out areas that you hit certain parts and stuff?
Which I'm curious as to how they've evolved that whole process, because 20 years ago. Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it. I really wouldn't doubt it. I'm sure
they have an app and they steal Amazon packages.
They probably.
I would like to see the data on that, like Mormon, J-Dub population to the amount of stolen Amazon packages. I bet there's a correlation. There has to be. They don't make much money, as we've already talked about. So
I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if several years ago they sent out a whole crew to Silicon Valley to try to flip a couple of young startup guys. Like, come with us. So the idea of them having an app, really, I mean, I know we're joking about it, but it's really not even that preposterous. They probably
it's a whole department now, just like their art department.
Yeah. But like when I was doing it, it was very analog. You know what I mean? So like I was in a town in Connecticut. My congregation was right across the border in Westchester. So there was like four or five towns in that vicinity that were our territory. And so we would get like a little map of a little section of that territory with the street names. And then we would have to hit every street on that map. And then we would have to keep copious notes. We hit number 27 on Peaceable Lane, and they were home, but they were not interested. So we would return 6 months later. If they were home and interested, you go back in 2 weeks, and you keep wearing them down until you can hopefully get them to come to one of the meetings or start up a Bible study. And it was relentless. And the only time that you would write down, there was like abbreviations for things. So like NH was not home, NI was not interested, I interested, DNC stood for do not call, and do not call, you would only write that down if somebody threatened you with violence, like get the fuck off my property. If you guys have listened to me talk about this on other podcasts, I had a guy threaten to pull a shotgun on me when I was 12. So, that was definitely a DNC. I ran from a couple of attack dogs. So, but unless it was of that magnitude, you would just keep going back. Like,
that's a little cheat code for you audience members.
They may have told us not to go back, but they don't know what they're talking about. It's just like, don't know how to take no for an answer, So no matter how much they were like, never come back here, you were like, not interested. Come back. You don't mean that.
Oh, it's funny because it's like, okay. Well, what was your closing ratio on it? Because it's so much similar.
I know how many were got into? We're like, yeah, this sounds great. Tell me more.
Did anybody except for your mom like ever like act upon it?
That's a good question. In the 20 years that I was a part of it, I could count on one hand the amount of people that actually fully immerse themselves to the point of becoming baptized. Because, in Jehovah's Witnesses, you don't become baptized until you make that choice, to completely immerse yourself in the religion. And I could count on one hand the amount of people that actually went all through all the steps all through the Bible study, baptism, going out door to door, who really became like full throttle members. There was a lot of people that were just kind of down and out. That's another thing. They prey on people that are down and out because one of their, one of the cornerstones of their belief system is that this current system of things is under Satan's rule. We're living in the end of days, and Armageddon could come at any moment, which they've falsely predicted 3 times now. So they originally predicted it in 1914, Then they predicted it in 1975. And then they predicted it in 2000. And then finally, after that fucking third strikeout, they were like, you know what? Let's lay off the actual date of impending doom. Let's just say it's close at hand and leave it at that. Paint it with a broader brush. Yeah. So
it's like they waited a generation each time, hoping that like the last one forgot. They're like, well,
yes,
people who are really into it are pretty close to dead now or aren't quite remembering things properly. So let's pick a new date. It's a good time. We'll see where this goes.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. But so like they would prey. They would kind of like prey on people that were down and out. So like, it sounds so fucking twisted looking back on things, but they would read the obituaries in the newspaper and find out where these people that had just lost a loved one, they would find out where they lived. Be like, we got to hit this person hard, because their belief is that after Armageddon, Jehovah is going to transform after 99% of the population is destroyed. Everybody who's not an upstanding Jehovah's Witness is destroyed. Jehovah is going to transform the earth into a beautiful paradise where man and beast will live in perfect harmony as one forever. Everybody will live forever.
The Lion and the Lamb. I get it.
Yeah.
We got a version of that too.
There you go. Yeah. And everybody who was an upstanding Jehovah's Witness who had previously died will be resurrected from the dead to live. So they would prey on these people and be like, hey, if you come with us, if you're able to see the truth, as they call it, and you show Jehovah that you're devoted to him and his purpose for mankind, you have the possibility of seeing your loved ones again. So there was this false promise that was offered to all these people that were, desperate for anything. And so that's how a lot of people get lured in. So there was a lot of people that were really down and out, had some sort of tragedy in their life that would kind of, open their hearts to the witnesses and be like, yes, anything you have to offer. Thank God. Like I've been miserable. This is what I've been longing to hear. And
somebody to talk to even.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. A lot of just lonely people. So there was a lot of people that I would go to the meetings, and I'd see people that I didn't know sitting in the back, that clearly weren't members of the congregation, but that happened a lot. A lot of people that would start Bible studies and go to meetings. And then as things got more involved and more was demanded of them, and they would start to get a little bit of a whiff of the punishing mentality that goes along with it, they would bow out, and be like, oh, this isn't quite the cakewalk I thought it was. Like, I'm not going to throw my whole fucking life. Yeah. Yeah.
It's like you think you're going to a party with free sandwiches, but then they start telling you like, well, to get into Cutco, you have to buy the starter kit, which is $600. But if you work hard enough and you recruit enough team members, eventually this could replace your income.
Which I did. Yeah. I was a Cutco salesman for a moment in high school. I don't think you knew that, Casey. You might not have known that, but you hit on something very close to home for me.
I'll bet you were great at it.
I still have the set. I still use those
sold
knives.
Yourself a set.
I swear to God, those things actually hold up. So in case anyone's wondering, I think they still consider. I got something in the mail from them not too long ago. They still consider me part of the club. It really is like a religion. You're never done.
Oh wow, yeah, right.
So if anyone's interested in, I don't know if this is like a real good way. I don't know if they're okay with this, but if anyone is interested in Cutco, go ahead and message the Instagram page, and maybe I'll change careers if a lot of you show some interest. So,
it is funny.
You probably still remember your pitch, man.
Yeah, I mean, I remember cutting a penny into a spiral defacing government property.
That's hilarious.
Dude, wow. It is terrible. Like when you, that preying on people who are vulnerable, is definitely not unique to any particular strain of religion. Right. But like, my grandpa died. It's coming up on 3 years ago, I think. And he was just like the best guy. Everybody loved him. He was just like this dynamic, like vivacious dude that loved everybody. I mean, he was just great. He was great. You couldn't say enough good things about him. But the funeral was like in the spring, and there was a big blizzard, so like not everybody got to go to it, So we were streaming the funeral, and their pastor got up and did the service, and did the wake and stuff. And he's reading through it, and he's like, well, Ed was a father of, 3 children, and he enjoyed fishing and hunting and the outdoors. And that was all he said about my grandpa. Then he launched into, someday we're all going to die. And we're, what do you know where you're going to go? And dude, I just was like red faced, like sitting in my living room, just like seething that's what my grandpa gets, like at the end, like that's what you've got. And you just use it as a sales pitch.
Wow.
They love co-opting funerals. That happened. That's happened to a number of family members of mine, grandparents, things like that, where it's just like, sitting there listening to that pitch, you're like, oh my God, this is a nightmare. Right. What's crazy is no one afterwards is like scared straight. No one's just like, yeah, I'm in. It's the only people who are like, that was a really, really wonderful funeral are the people who are like, everybody needs to hear that message. And that's all that life's about. So it's a weird,
it's completely impersonal, right? It's just another means for them to continue to, unload their propaganda.
Yes. So Baptist churches, there's always feuds going on about doctrinal stuff and different things like that. What color hymnals we ought to buy, what kind of carpet we should put in the sanctuary. What do Jehovah's Witnesses fight about? Like, do you remember any congregational turmoil from when you were younger?
Oh man, that's funny. Well, I remember like, I don't think I was really privy to very much, but I know that because everything is so insular, a lot of witnesses would, if they had a job to be done around the house, would use other witnesses. So like, I remember we had the interior of our house repainted at one point, and we used another witness in the congregation who was a painter, and he happened to do a great job. So there was no problem there, but I knew of several instances where a Jehovah's Witness in the congregation was either used as a mechanic or for their plumbing skills or whatever it may be, that again weren't very adept at their chosen profession because they don't have any fucking time to do it because they're out knocking on doors and going to meetings 24/7. So there would be, people would get screwed over, be like, hiring a contractor, which contractors shit the bed routinely anyway, even if they're not a Jehovah's Witness. You throw that in the mix. It's like, dude, I got a fucking hole in my roof. You said you were going to fix 3 months ago. So that I remember several times hearing an elder at the podium, delivering an address to the congregation where he would say, sometimes it is better to seek a professional outside of the religion because it's not always good to mix the business and the brotherhood,
It's a witnessing opportunity. Don't get me wrong.
Yes, exactly. Yes, and they absolutely would say that. Yes, yes.
Sometimes you buy a window from somebody you think is your brother, and then several pairs of your wife's panties go missing. It's the darndest thing.
Dude, when you were talking about how like they find a way to keep the community like insular, even though they're out there, it's like, so for they have their doctors and their lawyers and they can be used for anything. And doctors are good for everything except for blood transfusions, obviously. But
we got to talk about that.
But it makes me think of like kind of like mafia type shit. I feel like there's another analogy that I feel like should be coming to my mind, but it's just like you walk into a room and it's like there's a way to know, like this little thing on your wrist, or you do a little like tap on the wrist when you shake someone's hand. Like it feels like that kind of secret society. I know they're a little bit more public about it, so it's not trying to be secret, but
tap under the stall.
Yeah, that's all I can think of when you're like, yeah, you go to the doctors and you're like, oh, I'm in good hands. Jehovah's Witness doctor. Or I only go to Jehovah's Witness doctors. So like even in you don't really have to break outside of your bubble, which makes, well, actually it makes their their retention rate even more pitiful, because there's, with that little exposure to the outside world, all these people catching on is kind of like, well, maybe it's just not that great of an idea. People are seeing through it that easily. But I just think that's so wild. I mean, I felt like I was an insular childhood. I grew up, homeschooled, grew up in the church. My only outlet was church. So for me, church, that was my like experiences. So that's probably why I didn't question most things until I was in my mid-20s. I just kind of rolled with it until then. Right. I was like, I never read this part before. You're telling me that it said this the entire time? That's interesting. We should talk about that.
Yeah. I mean, that's why, like, I was glad that I wasn't homeschooled, but at the same time, like, if my mom really wanted to keep me in it, like the idea of really wanting your child to adhere to everything that goes along with the religion and abiding by all the rules and regulations, you're sending them off to public school every day and they're getting a glimpse of what they're missing out on. It's like, it completely works against what you're hoping for as a parent, in terms of what your kid is going to become and strive for in life. And it became, it very, very early on became, how can I get away with these things without my mom knowing? So from a very early age, it just became, how can I successfully live a double life? And that's what countless witnesses do. They go through the motions and they try to put on a good face because that's their community and that's their world. And when you're in it, you're taken care of, man. Like the congregation really rallies behind you. If you're sick, people drive you to the doctor, bring you meals, you need a babysitter, like you are taken care of. But if you stray for a moment, you're constantly threatened with being completely ostracized. Not only just kicked out of the religion, but nobody talks to you, nobody acknowledges you. You walk past somebody on the street, they won't even make eye contact. So there was a lot of people that were successfully living double lives because they couldn't resist the temptations of the outside world, but they also wanted the benefits that went along with being part of a structured organization,
Yeah, they were fudging the numbers on their witnessing reports, I bet. Oh,
absolutely. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I did that plenty of times. Times.
Were you scared when you did that? Or were you like, shit, someone's going to find out about this?
It's all on an honor system. So like, I would never, jot down a crazy number. Like, yeah, I put in 100 hours this month. It would always just be like the bare minimum. But if I had to stand any of the others, like, oh, sorry, if school was really demanding this month,
Dude, you have straight Fs. What the fuck are you talking about?
Was school, because I could see it going both ways for you as a kid. Like, I could see it being like the refuge where you get away from all of this Jehovah's Witness stuff, or I could also see it being like a very stressful place because you're so much different than the kids that you're going to school with, and you're not really encouraged to get to know them and get close to anybody and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah, it was a bit of both. I mean, it was nice to, because when I was home, there was really no like safe haven. There was no logging off. There was no real downtime. You know what I mean? Like, you wake up in the morning, you have the amount of publications that they have is mind blowing. So you start your day by reading a daily text, which is like a Bible passage, a single scripture, and then kind of like a commentary on that scripture and how to apply that to your day. So it's almost like a daily calendar, like a desk calendar, but instead of, a fucking funny cartoon, it's a scripture that you're supposed to apply to your life on that particular day. So every morning at the breakfast table would be, a discussion of the daily text. Then I would go to school, and then I would come home. I'd do my homework, and then there would be preparation for, if it was a Tuesday, preparation for the meeting that Tuesday, or preparation for the meeting on Thursday. If it wasn't that, we had a family Bible study every Monday night, which a lot of families in the congregation did, which is just like just pick any publication and we spend an hour reading and discussing that particular publication.
Was that just your family, or did you do that with other families?
Pretty much every family in the congregation. But like I said, this congregation, from what I was told, was way more strict than any other congregation that people had been a part of.
But
so,
other people weren't going over, like you weren't doing it as a group with other families. It was like the families individually did them by themselves.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That sounds awkward.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was awful. So like, yes, it was nice to be in school because it was kind of finally a break from the demands of just incessant Bible study and just completely being inundated with all this indoctrination. But yeah, at the same time, I felt like a freak and I didn't want anybody to know, but at the same time, there's really no like hiding it, like, because they're Jehovah's Witnesses are neutral. So the very first day of kindergarten, everybody's standing for the Pledge of Allegiance, and I'm sitting there in the chair with my arms folded because that's what my mom told me to do. She's like, "Don't succumb to peer pressure. Like, you do not stand and salute the flag. That's idolatry, and we do not. We're not nationalistic. We don't view any particular country or government as any sort of power. The only power in your life is Jehovah. So you don't, you don't pledge allegiance to some fucking flag, So I stuck out like a sore thumb from day one. Kids would have birthdays, bring in cupcakes. I would leave the classroom and go sit in the library by myself. It was.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
You had to leave. Yeah. I mean, I've heard those stories. I didn't know if that's like an every kind of person thing, but you really had to leave the classroom, not even eat a cupcake, leave the classroom.
Leave the classroom. Couldn't even view the celebration, in like, I think evolution started being taught in maybe like 6th or 7th grade. There were like several classes that I was exempt from, because Jehovah's Witnesses don't believe in evolution, So it was looking back on it now, though, it's funny because I think if I had just been honest with everybody from the get-go, like, guys, I'm a Jehovah's Witness. There's a lot of stuff I can't do. I think people, whenever kids would find out about it, I was so worried about being bullied and be like, well, look at this fucking Jesus freak, Nobody did that. If anything, it was like pity, Kids would find out that I was a witness and they would just be like, oh, fuck, man, that sucks. Like, it was almost like I had it so bad already that they weren't gonna pile onto that. You know what I mean? Like,
did any of the teachers or anybody did anybody treat you with any sort of contempt when you weren't standing for the pledge or taking part in normal things?
I think teachers too. I specifically remember several teachers when they would come up to me and be like, so Alex brought in cupcakes for his birthday, so I just wanted to give you a heads up if you want to kind of slip out of the room right now while everybody's finishing up their quiz, so you're not, making a spectacle of yourself. They also took pity on me. They felt fucking bad for me. So they they would do everything that they could to not, ostracize me or draw any attention to myself. So if I had to do it over again, I would have just gone in there guns blazing on day one. It's like, guys, my fucking mom is a bitch and she makes me do all this crazy shit that I hate and I don't believe in. So, if you think I'm a fucking weirdo, it's all her fault.
Yeah, it's hilarious how it's like the opposite of the persecution porn that they fed us, because we got a lot of that too, especially after Columbine and stuff. Which you're just a little bit older than us, so I'm sure that was a thing for you guys too. But we talked nonstop about if somebody were to put a gun to your head and ask you if you believed in God,
oh yeah,
could you answer? And I was thinking about that in regards to, I think I listened to episode that you did with Ari Shafir, that troll of a human being. He's funny. But talking about the card that you carried around, because
right.
For people who don't know, explain the Jehovah's Witnesses view on blood transfusions.
So Yeah, one of their hard and fast rules is that blood transfusions are not permitted under any circumstances whatsoever. And the funny thing is there's no real, I mean, blood transfusions didn't exist at the time the Bible was written, but there's no real, the thing about Jehovah's Witnesses is they pride themselves on having all of their beliefs being Bible-based. But the thing is, so many of their beliefs are an interpretation of a straight up, an interpretation that are a real stretch, you know. And it's almost like they pride themselves on being, on being extremists, you know. And if they're like, well, these other Christian religions, they may have a little bit of a looser stance on this particular subject. We're gonna really fucking turn the screws on this and enforce something that's way more extreme or way more strict. So I still really cannot. I've never been able to pinpoint anything in the Bible that says like it's a sin to take blood for health purposes, you know. But they have leaned into that hard. So from the time I was old enough to, as soon as I was going to school, even if I didn't have a wallet, you know, like I have a son who's 6 years old. He doesn't have a wallet, but you know, he has like an ID card in his backpack, you know. So I remember carrying this card in my backpack that was a legally binding document that was signed by both my parents that said if I was in some sort of a medical emergency that I would not be supplied with a blood transfusion. And
that shit's so wild to me, dude.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I didn't give it a second thought as a kid, because first of all, you think you're invincible when you're a kid. You don't think about anything bad.
I mean, I remember when I got my license and like, do you want to be an organ donor? And you're just like, yeah, fuck it. Who gives a shit? Like,
yeah.
The idea of like,
I ain't using it. Yeah.
Death isn't even on your mind. Like you don't actually consider it. You're just like, yeah, someone else can use them. Sure. It's never going to happen because I'm perfect and invincible. Nothing bad could ever happen to me.
Exactly. Yeah. So, yeah, the fact, and there was another publication. Shit, I wish I could remember the name of it. It was, I think it was something along the lines of like kids who put God first. And it was firsthand accounts. They would have like thumbnail pictures of all these kids who had died because they had refused a blood transfusion, but they were used as an example to show other Jehovah's Witness kids of like, these kids put Jehovah first and they're heroes and they are sure to be resurrected after Armageddon because they put Jehovah first and you need to do the same. So there were these thumbnail pictures of all these kids and like, just these tragic stories of like, this kid had some rare blood disorder. This kid was in a horrible car accident. And a lot of these kids were so brainwashed that they made the decision themselves. Doctors would approach them in the hospital room when their parents were out and be like, listen, you don't need to subscribe to this whole thing that your parents are trying to push on you. Like, we can save your life. We have the ability to save your life. And these kids being like, no, I don't want to hear it. I put Jehovah first. He says no blood transfusion. Therefore, I say no blood transfusion. And it's fucking...
That's what the cartoon said. It's insane.
I can't even wrap my mind around that, especially plastering their pictures all over the place. Like,
right? Oh,
like a high honor. Like, you know what? My goal in life is to get my face on that plaque. That's what no, that's not what you want to do. It's like with a gold sticker right underneath it.
You're in the bathtub with your wrist slit open. No blood transfusion.
I've made my bed.
Now, what if I don't know if this has ever happened, but you're saying you would have this card on you. Say that's in your backpack. Something awful happens. You're separated from your backpack. Gets ripped clean off your body in a hideous car wreck. And they find you. They don't see your backpack right away. They resuscitate you. They get you on that blood transfusion real quick. Save your life. Do your parents then murder you when you get
Enjoy
home?
hell.
What do they do with you? They just put you in a dumpster and say, I guess we're done with this one. Oh, no, suing covers a multitude of sins, I think is what it is.
You're still going to hell, but they will punish the people who saved you.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Jehovah's Witnesses don't believe in hell, but they honestly probably would believe that you would be tainted, and that you would not survive Armageddon, or if you did, I don't know, you wouldn't be held in the same esteem as other witnesses because you had gone against one of their, major principles.
You're not a virgin anymore.
Back of the bus. Yeah, you sit in the back of the bus for the rest of your life.
You blood whore.
Okay. They don't believe in hell. This is something I feel like we have to talk about because as evangelicals, hell was the biggest of big. Like, everything in your life was really wrapped up in avoiding eternal conscious torment. So that's why, I'm surprised. Like I'm blown away that you have so many Jehovah's Witnesses. When you're like, you can't have sex, and then you go, okay, but what happens if I do? They're like, we just won't like you as much. And they're like, okay,
the hook is weak.
Do it. Yeah, it's not good.
Yeah,
unless it's just like, well, if you do it and then you died immediately after without repenting, then you might be spending eternity in hell getting poked with a cattle prod. And I just so much of our life was spent avoiding that or like addressing that fear, even subconsciously, where it's just like that was ultimately our reason for, because we were told God's grace covers everything. Christ died for everyone. Christ's blood covers your sins. We heard all that. We were told the unconditional love of Christ message. But when you get that coupled with eternal conscious torment, you're like, you also get this message of, well, but if you do go down that path, maybe you never really believed it right to begin with, and now you're in danger again. So you could never really you could never convince yourself that you were really in. You would have to be like, if I'm acting wrong, it's because I don't believe this, and now I'm fucked. So then you have to get back on the right track and
never completely safe.
Yeah. How you guys accomplished anything without the fear of hell backing it is really mind-boggling to me. So there's no hell. Armageddon's coming. Some people go to heaven and everyone else ceases to exist. Unpack that a little bit. What's the deal there?
So the belief is that if you survive Armageddon, and
that's
Jehovah's
living through it. Is that physically living through?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, fire and brimstone and, every sort of natural disaster you can imagine, people getting swept up in tidal waves and tossed aside by tornadoes or hurricanes. You're just complete pandemonium all around you. You're led to believe that, you find a sturdy doorway to duck under and just all hell breaks loose around you. And you somehow you are going to be unscathed by this massive worldwide destruction. Which is so, people think Scientology is so out there and sci-fi, but when you break down the fundamentals of what Jehovah's Witnesses believe, it's mind-blowingly parallel in terms of it sounds like a fucking sci-fi movie. It's ridiculous. So you're led to believe that immediately after that, the earth is going to be transformed into a paradise just with a snap of a finger. And this beautiful, lush, rolling pastures, green, abundant with fruits and vegetables, and people just harvesting food, and everybody smiling. I mean, the publications have these illustrations that are just so ridiculous, and so you're led to believe that you will either live forever on this paradise earth, or if you have died, you will be resurrected to live on this paradise earth. Or they also believe that there's a select few, 144,000 is the specific number, that receive some sort of a divine calling from Jehovah, that they are meant to, rather than be resurrected, they're meant to rule alongside Jesus in heaven over this paradise earth. So
seems like a lot of cooks in the kitchen.
Right. Yeah. Why does he need that much help? I thought that guy would be able to handle that on his own.
I mean, look at the place we're living in now. Could you imagine it being any better? He doesn't need any.
Everyone will live, but 144,000 of you will have health care.
I'm talking universal basic income.
See, that would be a hell of a selling point. That's what they really got to do. I remember the only holiday that Jehovah's Witnesses celebrate, and it's not not much of a celebration. The only holiday is also a loose term. The only day that they observe is the anniversary of Jesus' death, which is Nisan 14 on the Jewish calendar, and it usually falls sometime in April. And again, that's because according to the Bible, that's the only day that you're told to observe. Every other holiday is pagan. So on this day, they would pass around. There would be a sermon all about the magnitude of Jesus' impact on mankind. He gave his life as a ransom sacrifice so that we could have the opportunity to live forever. So they would pass around unleavened bread to represent his body, and then wine to represent his blood. And you would it would get passed along down the aisle, and you would hand it to your neighbor. And the only people that would partake of this were people that were somehow believed that they had received this divine calling from Jehovah, that they were among the anointed. So again, just on an honor system, you know what I mean? Like, I could have, as a 14-year-old, just fucking pounded a glass of wine, be like, sorry, dude, I'm from the anointed, like I'm going up there with the J-Man.
So everybody eyeballed who is the one to take the bread. It was like, who's going to be the first one to the pizza buffet?
Right, yeah. So I could, again, count on one hand the amount of times that I would see, and it would always be like older elders in the congregation that you would see drinking from the wine, and you'd be like, oh my God. And it was like royalty. It was like, oh my God, that guy's part of the anointed. Holy shit. Like, he's, he probably walks on water himself. Like, you look at them, it's like, oh my God, they're like on another level.
He screwed me on siding.
I almost missed the siding part and was like, well, he's never going to get caught. So,
dude,
man.
I am curious. Like, okay, so obviously, like, moratorium on all sorts of media and pop culture stuff and everything like that. Like,
yeah,
you as a young, like, teenager, what things, like, what specific things were you just like craving that you couldn't have? Like, is there certain movies or music that you just wanted so bad but you couldn't have it at home?
Yeah, I was MTV was my portal to the outside world. So I watched MTV 24/7 while also having the controller in my hand, ready to click the channel at a moment's notice, because MTV was also super frowned upon. That was
that last button,
portal to the devil's asshole. You know what I mean? Like, that is just like, that is just, a huge no-no. So that was, but it really was music specifically was my main portal to the outside world. So that was really kind of like, that was kind of how I educated myself about what was on the outside. So MTV was huge. And then when I was 15, I got really into rap music, which of course was completely
the worst kind of
to my mother. Yeah. And I remember my sister driving me to the mall when I was like 15, and I got DMX, Flesh of My Flesh, Blood of My Blood. And I don't know if you remember that album cover, but it's just a white background with DMX, and he's kind of holding his hands like this, and he's just drenched in blood. Just drenched. It's still to this day, 20 years later, one of the most shocking album covers I've ever seen. And I remember bringing it home and like sneaking it in the house under my jacket, and I had a whole stash of rap CDs on the top shelf of my closet in my room. And that was like where I kept that was where I kept all my albums, and I knew that if my mom found those, she would lose her fucking mind. And then one weekend while I was away with some other Jehovah's Witnesses, we went to this amusement park in Pennsylvania. She cleaned my room while I was away, and she found this stash, and she confronted me when I came home, and I just sung like a canary. I was like, "Oh my, I'm the worst. I'm the worst. It was pathetic. I was like, I'm gonna die at Armageddon, aren't I? I'm the fucking worst. I'm so sorry. I wish I was better. I wish I was a better boy, you know." And I was just like, "I'm so sorry." And she's like, "I don't want that filth in my house." And I was like, "Can I sell?" All my after school job money went toward buying these CDs. You know, it's crazy to look back on what it was like as a teenager. You know, now you like something, you listen to whatever you want on Spotify for $10 a month. You know,
it was
when I
so
was growing
expensive.
Yeah, when I was growing up, you like a single song, you got to drop $18 on a fucking CD. And the chances of any other songs on the album being listenable are slim to none. You know, so it was a real gamble. So hundreds of dollars worth of rap CDs that I was like, "Can I at least resell them?" And she's like, "No, you throw those in the garbage. I don't want anyone else partaking of this either." So I remember carrying this big bin of CDs out into the garage, tears streaming down my face, and just dumping $400 worth of CDs into the trash.
That's such a horrible feeling.
And and that was like a major turning point for me, where I was like, "Fuck this, fuck her. I'm done with this. This is ruining my life." You know, I can't even have that. Like I'm adhering to all this other stuff. Like the amount of sexual repression that is put on adolescents in the Jehovah's Witness community is so intense. And I'm like, you know, I'm not dating anybody. I'm adhering to all these other rules and regulations. I got a couple of fucking rap CDs, and you're ready to rake me over the coals over that. Like, this is too much. I can't handle this. But yeah, no R-rated movies. Ever get caught with what?
Did you ever get caught with like porn or something masturbatory that you had to apologize for?
Luckily, no. Another thing was my mom wouldn't allow internet in the house. My sister, my parents were older, so they had no idea I was able to have like a desktop computer just for doing like, you know, school assignments. My sister hooked up a dial-up connection without their knowledge. So, you know, anytime the phone would ring, my internet service would get, you know, ixnayed. But I wasn't even adept enough to find porn on the internet. My only porn outlet was just watching scrambled Cinemax at like 12 o'clock at night.
I've heard a bunch of people say that.
Just like hoping to see a nipple, yeah. And then comparing notes at the lunch table the next day. Be like, "Dude, 11:17 last night. I swear to God, I saw 2 fucking areolas at the same time."
Dude, I remember one time.
And your buddy would be like, "I think that was a pair of balls," and you're like, "Oh yeah."
I remember one time having that channel. It's like, I don't know if it was Cinemax. For me, it was channel 99. It was all like the green and reds, and it's like all wavy side to side. Can't make out anything. Occasionally, you'd hear like a moan through the crackle of the white noise. Right. And I remember like turning that on, thinking I had a solid 30 minutes, and that was like, my dad came home, and we had the 2 door. I lived in a ranch, and ranches always have like the 1 door in the living room, and like 12 feet away is another door. No one ever used that other door. And for some God ordained reason, he came in through that door that day. And I think that's where my faith was solidified. I repented for my sins and followed Christ into eternity.
You go one of 2 ways.
Yeah, right.
I have one more question. I know we gotta kind of wrap up, but is there Mormon? I mean, is there Jehovah's Witness music? Because Christian music is huge. CCM, even just like it's all like worshipy. Right. But is Jehovah's Witnesses? Do they have their own music?
That is a good question. Their own music only comes in the form of hymns that they sing before and after each church service. But these are songs that were written by the governing body, without getting too into it, is basically like, I've kind of come to realize as I've gotten older, it's almost like a secret society of higher ranking elders, that there's like 6 or 7 elders that basically call all the shots, and they make all the decisions that trickle down to all these congregations. So the governing body basically, again, there's people that excel in every field in some areas within the Jehovah's Witness organization. So they would take this group of musicians and they would pen these spiritual hymns specifically about Jehovah's Witness doctrines to classical music. They would have a whole symphony behind them, and they had a songbook called it was an orange songbook called Sing Praises to Jehovah, and it had probably about 130 different songs that you would kind of like. They would be randomly selected to start and end every meeting, and everybody would stand and they would play. I remember one of my duties when I was a teenager as a Jehovah's Witness was I was kind of manning the tech booth in the back. So I would like make sure all the microphones were at the proper level when the elder was delivering the sermon, and I would put on the CD when it was time to sing the hymns. And, have to skip to the song and play it at just the right time, which I constantly fucked up. They'd be like, and now we're going to sing song number 47. I'd be half asleep in the back. I'd be like, oh, fuck. The CD jack is flying everywhere, scrambling to put the thing on and cue it up. And everybody would stand and just belt out these songs, reading along with the lyrics and just belting out these songs. And it was the most embarrassing fucking thing you've ever seen in your life. And
there's nothing worse than that.
Yeah, dude, it was crazy. But again, it's all stuff that looking back on it now, at the time, it's like, yeah, this is normal. This is what life looks like. This is what people do. And now looking back on it, it's just like, oh my God, it makes my fucking skin crawl to think the amount of times I spent standing and lip syncing like I was in a chorus class that I didn't want to be in. I was, it was horrible. But in terms of like, in terms of like Jehovah's Witness rock or like secular music, no, nothing. But and like the only stuff that was permitted was, the few things that have that don't allude to any sort of immorality or devil worship or any, nothing remotely provocative. So I remember, you could listen to like U2 or REM or like, I remember when like swing music was huge in like 1997. Like Jehovah's Witnesses were all about swing music because you can dance 4 feet away from your partner, and it's just about just shucking and jiving. It was like they finally found a genre of music that like wasn't really offensive, and so for that reason, all the REM, U2, swing, I fucking hated it because it was like the only thing that was allowed, and I was like, no, I don't want any part of this horse shit. No thanks. I'd rather listen to nothing.
Yeah, I would rather not have music than listen to U2.
A lot of people felt that way when Apple gave him that free album like 9 years ago. Calling back to that.
Right.
Man, Doug, this was a lot of fun. I really appreciate hearing your story.
I'm sorry I got to jump off. I mean, I can talk with you guys for hours about this shit. It's nice to talk to people that there's definitely a lot of parallels, so it's nice to commiserate.
Well, if you need to commiserate with people again, and I'm sure we could go for hours, and there's plenty more to touch on, so we'll be here if you need an outlet. I know you got your own hopefully coming out soon. I can't wait. If you have you said you're working on a pitch to have to talk about all this shit on your own podcast. I'll be looking forward to that. Where can people find you? What do you got going on?
I'm on all social media platforms at WhoDougSmith, Instagram, Twitter at WhoDougSmith. I'm actually working on a solo show right now all about the Jehovah's Witness years, and I'm doing a monthly show with 3 other great comics: Chris Gethard, Anthony DeVito, Casey James Salengo. They're all working on different solo shows right now. So we got this show called Sad Sacks. They're all pretty sad tales.
I love it. Chris Gethard's great too. That name I'm very familiar with.
Yeah, he's fantastic. He's been a bit of a mentor to me. He was one of my improv teachers early on, and we've kind of stayed in touch and become
nice.
friendly. And yeah, he's fantastic. So we have this show together. Our next one is, I don't know when this is coming out, but our next one is February 9th at 7 p.m. at Caveat in New York City on the Lower East Side. And we're all basically just workshopping like different segments of our solo show. So we each do about like 20 minutes. And
Nice.
we just had our first one in December. It went really well. So yeah.
Awesome. Now, is your special anywhere? I feel like it was on Spotify, and then I couldn't find it.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm one of the many comics whose shit has been taken off. There seems to be no rhyme or reason to it. I can't figure out who has been taken off and who hasn't for whatever reason. It seems to just be selected at random.
So
my album, like protesting Joe Rogan, though.
I'm not protesting Rogan. No, I mean, I listen to plenty of Rogan. You know, it's all contingent on the guest for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, unfortunately, my album is not on Spotify, and I can't even, you know, if you want to buy an album, I haven't bought an album in fucking 15 years. So I'm not one to advocate anybody buying an album. But if you're so inclined to buy my album, Barely Regal, it would mean the world to me. But hopefully it'll be back on Spotify soon. You can listen to it for free.
Well, I'm glad I got to listen to it before it was taken down, because I definitely refused to buy it. So
good for you. Take it to the man.
No, it was great though. So that's why I was hoping to be able to direct people towards. So if it pops up, I'll direct people that way. But Doug, this was a lot of fun, man. Thanks again.
Yeah, thank you guys.
I'd let you go, but
hope to do it again soon.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, everybody. Well, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.